Hello my dear friends and welcome to StudyIQ. I am Joycey Joy and today in this lecture we will discuss about CSR or Corporate Social Responsibility Appropriation. So we will see what is the current affair that is related to CSR, and we will also see some of the important provisions of CSR and what are the recent appropriation or changes made to the rules regarding CSR, what are the amendments made, and also we will see what is the impact of these amendments, whether these amendments are of regressive in nature, and also we will see what is the way forward. So we will discuss all these in detail in this lecture. So let us start with analyzing what is the current affair. Now, first of all, if we analyze the current affair, we will see that the government has introduced the Companies Amendment Bill 2019 in the Parliament. So, we have already discussed in detail about the Companies Amendment Bill of 2019, which was introduced in the Parliament in detail in a different lecture. You can refer to the lecture for more details of the amendment of Companies Act of 2013. Now, in the Companies Act or the amendment bill, the Companies Amendment Bill, the government has planned certain appropriation for the unspent amount of CSR. That is the money or the fund that are unutilized or that are not spent under the CSR amounts by the companies. Certain appropriation has been proposed and recommended by the government. So we will be looking at these appropriation or the proposals of the government. So let us first understand what is CSR or what is corporate social responsibility. So corporate social responsibility has been given a definition under the CSR rules of the Companies Act. So Companies Act is in the year of 2013. So in the original Companies Act of 2013, a proper definition for the CSR rules has been given, or what is CSR has been defined under the CSR rules of the Companies Act. Now, the definition of the CSR includes those projects related to activities specified in the Schedule 7 of the Companies Act. Again, projects related to activities taken by the company board as recommended by the CSR committee, provided those activities cover items listed in the Schedule 7. So this is the definition or a guideline given in the CSR rules. Now, if we see in detail what is CSR or corporate social responsibility, it is a tool by which the corporates become socially accountable. So this is a method or a tool used in the Companies Act in order to make the corporates or the companies socially accountable. This includes accountability to themselves, to the society, to different stakeholders of the company, and also to the general public in general. So this is the social accountability that is ensured through CSR initiative. So under the CSR, 2% of the profits are to be dedicated for social responsibility or as a social accountability measure of the company, which we will come to the details later in this lecture. Now let us understand what is the current law. So the current law is the Companies Act of 2013. This is because it is under the Companies Act of 2013 CSR has been mandated. So at present, the Companies Act of 2013 is the current law that deals with the CSR or corporate social responsibility of the corporates. Now, the companies meeting certain financial thresholds, that is the profit margins or the turnover, that is the financial threshold, profit or the turnover of a company, they are required to constitute an internal CSR committee. So it is mandatory under the company rules or the Companies Act rules or the CSR rules that those companies which meet certain financial thresholds, they have to maintain an internal CSR committee, and these committees shall be responsible for framing policies or guidelines and rules in order to ensure that 2% of the average profits of the company are spent for CSR or activities related to corporate social responsibility. Now, the first provision under the current law is that there should be an internal CSR committee in a company or a corporate firm that will ensure that the policies designed by this company or the CSR committee shall ensure the utilization of 2% of the average profits for CSR activities. And if there is any failure, that is the second condition, on failure of spending this 2% amount, the board owes an explanation in the annual report. So every corporate, every company will present its annual report. So in the annual report, it must be made clear why the company was not able to utilize the 2% average profit for CSR activities. So a proper explanation has to be placed in the annual report. So this is the current law. Now very important is section 135. So under section 135, this section requires the companies to have a CSR policy overseen by their own boards. So this section makes it mandatory for the companies to have their own CSR policy, and this has to be overseen by the board of the company itself. Now this is the current law. Now moving on to the amendments, let us see what are the amendments proposed. First one, in general, if we look at the amendments, the amendment aims at tightening the CSR norms in order to make the laws under the CSR or corporate social responsibility more stringent and tightened. So this is the general objective of it. And now this tightening of the norms will be done by amending the Original Companies Act of 2013. So this is applicable to the formal sector. So Companies Act is applicable to formal sector, both in the private sector and also in the public sector. So both for public and private sector, this is applicable. And this is by amending Companies Act, the government will tighten the norms under CSR. Now coming to section 135, we have already seen what is 135 section. So this requires companies to have their own CSR policy, which should be overseen by the boards. Now the provision under the section 135 will become a statutory requirement. Now the section mandates that there should be a CSR policy. Now with this amendment, it will become a statutory requirement. That means it will have a backing of law, or there will be a legal backing which will make it compulsory for the company. Otherwise, company will be held with certain liabilities or penalties from the part of the authorities. So this will become a statutory requirement. Now we have seen that 2% is what is the amount, or 2% of the average profit is what has to be spent on CSR activities by the company. Now with the new amendments, it will be mandatory for the companies to appropriate the unspent balances to a central fund. So now earlier, if the company was not able to utilize the 2% average profit completely for CSR activities, it merely had to state the reasons in their annual report. But now the government mandates that all the unspent amount under the CSR activity or CSR requirements needs to be transferred or appropriated to a central fund, and the central government will direct the spending of this amount. This is the new amendment. Now if we analyze this amendment, we will understand that this is a kind of regressive in nature. Why this is regressive in nature is because the new provision mandates that if there is any unspent amount by a company, the company has to transfer it or appropriate it to a central fund. Now, why it is called regressive? This is because the companies or the corporates, they are earning for profit. So they have their own business activity to carry out. Suppose a company who is involved in manufacturing steel, let us assume a company ABC which undertakes the manufacturing of steel, and they are held with social responsibility or CSR responsibility. Now they have to spend their 2% average profit for CSR activities. But the main intention or the objective of the company would be to raise its own production levels. So the company's primary focus would be on increasing the production of steel, not to spend time on CSR activities, which involves planning of activities, implementation of the activities. So this will not be the primary focus of this company. Now government has given an option that if this 2% funds are not utilized by the company for CSR activities, this can be given to a central fund. Now what the companies will do is that they are not interested to undertake social initiatives. They are not interested to plan and implement social projects. So they will transfer this 2% to the central fund, and center will take care of it. Now why there is a problem with transfer of this fund to center? The center or the central government also does not have the mechanism or does not have the manpower to plan and implement corporate social responsibility or social activities at a larger scale if all the companies starts transferring this amount to the central fund. So if we take an example, let us take the example of cess. Through cess, the government also receives a lot of fund or money. Even the cess amount has been underutilized in the country. Now, huge amounts of CSR funds, if they are appropriated to the central funds, it would be very difficult for the central government to undertake social activities in order to build social infrastructure. The manpower and the resources are lacking. So this can make this amendment regressive in nature. So this is the main drawback. Now if we look at the way forward or what has to be done, the government will have to introspect the arbitrary conditions in the CSR. So corporate social responsibility rules have certain arbitrary conditions and they act as limitations or shortcomings for the companies or the corporates to implement social projects in the country. So these arbitrary conditions should be removed and there should be ease of implementing social projects for the companies. So the companies itself will take initiative to implement social projects in the country and therefore the social responsibility of the company will increase and the general public will be able to benefit out of such activities. Now, second thing is regarding ease of doing business. Now, ease of doing business environment should also increase and along with that the rules that are applicable to CSR should also ease down. Now, second one is regarding ESG trend, which is an international trend or a trend that is seen visibly globally. So, ESG trend refers to environmental, social and governance trends. So, globally, we are observing a trend where the corporate social responsibility funds are used for environmental causes, social causes like education, healthcare, etc. and also governance issues. So this trend should continue in India and this should be given more focus and the government policies should be encouraging in nature in the sense that the companies will be able to plan and implement social projects in the country. You can find the PDF of this lecture on our website www.studyiq.com. You can also follow my Facebook page for more video updates. Thank you.